1. I work for a high-end clothing store specifically for women. The amount of older ladies, and I mean older, like between 60 and 80 years old, who come in and say the most genuinely foul things to people just doing their jobs are wild. The smallest jean sizes we offer are 000 or XXS. Since this is the smallest size, they're usually right smack dab at the top of the stack or front of the rack. So when older ladies ask for help with the jeans, we pick up the first pair at the top of the stack, which just so happens to be the XXS, to explain the rise, fit, and style, and these ladies don't hold back. They typically begin laughing at the size and making extremely rude comments about the size or associate helping them. They will go on to insinuate associates have eating disorders or weren't fed as children. We have even had ladies refer to associates as twiggy, wiry, all bones too skinny or emaciated. One older lady asked one of our associates what her secret was so she could tell her granddaughter. They say stuff like this all the time about smaller-sized items to our smaller-sized associates, and it's not like we're saying this is their size we explain to them, we're just using this as an example. And if they like the color, fit, etc., we will grab their size. But it's not just the smaller stuff they make fun of. The largest size we have, before it goes to plus size, is a 14 or XXL. Sometimes, if they are hanging on racks, it's easiest just to grab the closest size to you, to explain the fit and such, and sometimes that happens to be a 14. Sometimes when we grab a bigger size, they make extremely nasty comments about that, all while laughing their butts off, asking who could even fit into this, making nasty weight loss comments. Even if someone needed this size, they should just shop online, and other stuff I wouldn't dare to repeat. The difference is they make comments about our bigger sizes to everyone, but specifically only make comments about the smaller sizes to associates who wear smaller sizes. Almost like they think it's a compliment when in reality it's incredibly rude and disgusting. They also occasionally go above and beyond and just flat out make comments about associates' appearances, like telling a black associate to brush her hair, telling an associate her mother should be disappointed in her for wearing a shorter within dress code pencil skirt, telling an associate her winged eyeliner made her look scary and that men don't like that, and other general rudeness. I know it's not all older ladies. I've definitely met my share of genuinely sweet and polite older ladies. But good God, a majority of them feel the need to make nasty comments about anything and everything. 2. I had a lady come in for fly swatters. I immediately could tell by the way she carried herself and spoke that she would likely be an issue, posh, upper middle class, and uppity. But naturally, I can't assume these things, so I give her a chance. I point her in the direction of where they may be, but warn her they are likely out of stock. She comes back, and sure enough, no dice. I check out some other items she's grabbed, and she makes a passing comment about how there's no tickets anywhere, despite the fact that 95% of the store is ticketed. I don't have the energy or capacity to care, so I just ignore it and send her on her way. The next day, I'm working at a different store to help out and fill in a shift, about 30 minutes away from my regular store. Anywho, the posh woman from yesterday is apparently so desperate for a fly swatter, she has made the pilgrimage to a store 30 minutes away. And I'm standing in her crosshairs. She asks where the fly swatters are, and I point her in the vague direction of where I think they are. Mind you, I know the layout of this store, it's just that I've decided I don't like her, and wanted to pretend I don't know the store so I could waste her time. And off she goes, before making an underhanded comment, asking if there's anyone knowledgeable on the shop floor, of course. Fair enough, I earned that one. She unfortunately finds the fly swatters, and I begin to check her out. She would like a price check on a travel suitcase first, though, $50 big ones. Apparently too expensive for the lady who dresses like she drives an Audi. I would have known it was $50 if there was a ticket. Screw you. Today is different. You're not dodging a diatribe this time, lady. I begin to explain to her why there are sometimes gaps in tickets and why not everything can constantly be ticketed immediately. We are constantly receiving brand new products, so we are constantly rearranging stock and moving and removing tickets to accommodate. I also explain that we are constantly drowning in more stock than we can handle, and that the deliveries are constant. We get no say or influence on when they arrive and how many pallets they contain. Well, that's unfortunate, she says in the most passive-aggressive tone possible, followed on by even more grace. I shouldn't need to price-check things. Screw you, I'm not done yet. It would hurt productivity and waste time if we were to constantly have a printer on hand and print tickets off after finishing a box. I tell her this, building off my previous point. I also explain to her that most of the time we have to delay ticketing as we need to push through the stock so we have room for delivery, and that most days we cannot afford to have another employee on to do tickets, and if we can, they're likely going to be helping us with stock. Oh, and just exactly how does this profane and infernal piece of crap respond? Only in the most condescending way possible. Oh, you make it sound so complicated. Back in my day, it was simple. I was ropeable. I was ready to suplex her into a black hole, so help me God, I would have done it twice over. I'll see you at the Singularity, ma'am. I could not have given her a more accurate and ample explanation of why we are missing an oh so unholy 5% of tickets in store. I laid out the cogs of the machine, what goes on behind the scenes, and yet she still had the gall to sit there and tell me it's not good enough and that we need to try harder. Completely devoid of any and all empathy. A woman who has likely been spoon-fed her entire life. Anyways, thanks for listening to my argument as to why they should make it legal to kill one customer of your choosing a year. Hellfreezer's note, the only thing I have to add there is that whenever someone utters the expression back in my day, I remind them that if they're still sucking down air, this is in fact still their day, and they should get with the times. 3. So the other day, a man at my work came in without a receipt and broken equipment. He shows me the broken equipment and first asks me if he can exchange the product because the product failed in the first or second use, and it is my job to make it right. I have a printout of the return policies, and in the return policies, it says the product must have a receipt that is dated within 60 days of the sale, and the product must not have any signs of use. I explained that broken is a clear sign of use. He began yelling at me that he bought the product brand new less than a week ago, and within the first or second time of using the product it broke and I am obligated to make him happy and fix it. I apologized and told him that my hands were tied and that he could easily call the manufacturer and go forth with the manufacturer's exchange, citing that the product is defective. He huffed and told me he was not going to go through the ropes with the manufacturer when it was my fault for selling him defective equipment. I was not even there the day he bought this and had never met the man in my life until this point. I told him the only other option that I could give him was to speak to upper management, which would say the same thing I just told him, and he would leave empty-handed. Even with warning of what would happen, he demanded to speak to a higher-up in the store, surprise, surprise. The higher-up said the same thing, and the customer, as mentioned, left empty-handed. The customer stood there for a bit after the manager spoke to him, holding up the line, and the manager has said, "So you have the option of still going to the manufacturer. Unless you have any other business here, please move over so that my cashier can continue with assisting the rest of the customers." The man glared at me, then at my manager, and then told them that was rude and inconsiderate, and the entire exchange from both parties was rude and inconsiderate. He grabbed his broken equipment and told us both that he was going to call corporate. He asked for our names and grabbed a piece of paper from his pocket and a pen off the desk next to the cash register. My manager told him his name and addressed himself as the district lead and asked my name, and my manager told me not to tell the man my first name and assist with other customers. So I went about my business. The man laughed and said, "Fine, I will just get you fired." And left the store. An hour later, after I already forgot about the exchange, the corporate office called to speak to the manager. I transferred the phone through to the office before I left for the day. I asked about the phone call. The manager laughed and said, "Oh, corporate called to ask me to fill out any information I had about the customer. so that he could be banned from every store in the surrounding areas. I said, wow, a bit of an overreaction, huh? And the manager said, no, not really. Apparently, over the corporate phone call where he was complaining about not helping him, the man threatened the life of every employee from the company when corporate said that it's just not grounds for termination. I blinked in disbelief for a minute before I said, Jesus, over broken equipment? The manager shrugged and said, people have given less legitimate excuses and death threats. I paused for a minute before I said, I suppose that's true, and God, that's sad. Is it strictly an American thing for people to not be fazed at all over death threats given by angry customers? This is so sad, honestly. In this instance, I think gun control shouldn't 100% be the answer to these types of problems. I think mandatory anger management courses should also be a requirement for graduation, the same as foreign language is. Health research note, when I used to work retail, I was threatened quite a lot, actually. I genuinely lost number of the amount of times where someone threatened to be waiting for me after work because I wouldn't serve them alcohol or give them what other nonsense they felt they were totally entitled to. And honestly, I was starting to get disappointed after the 20th, 30th time, and there was no one there. Because they're cowards, every one of them. 4. This was over a decade ago. I was 15 and presenting in the drive-thru when a co-worker taking the orders in the hall said, "This guy has no pants on." An old man pulls up with this creepy grin. Every single manager was on the other side of the restaurant in a meeting, so we had a trainee who was technically not a manager yet running the floor. She tells me to hand the food out, probably should not have, while she's on the headset trying to get the attention of the GM. I handed him the bag of food. You could already tell he had no pants on, but I got the full view of his little flaccid pee-pee stuck to his thigh. He took the bag of food, thanked me, and drove off, smiling the whole time. We took the license plate down, and a cop showed up almost immediately to take statements. The only employees they wanted statements from were me and the girl at the front window, even though we had a couple of co-workers who wanted to see and looked out the window. They didn't take their statements or that of the trainee manager running the floor. A couple of weeks later, I'm subpoenaed. I actually had no idea at the time that the statement meant I'd have to testify. I have a lot of anxiety, especially then, and if I'd known, I might have tried to tell them I didn't see anything. Me and my mom got to the courthouse in town where the prosecutor meets us outside to run over some things. I then wait outside for the co-worker from the hall to finish being questioned. Then they call me in. I take the stand. The prosecutor lady is asking questions about what color a shirt he was wearing and what expression he had on his face. They go back and forth a little about how I wasn't qualified to answer questions about facial expressions. She reworded the question, and I was only allowed to say he was smiling. The defense attorney was being extremely abrasive the whole time, and I had never been to court before or anything, so I was already bricking at having to be there at all. Then it was his turn. He asked me how long the interaction lasted, and when I said, 30 seconds, he replied, "You stared at him for 30 seconds?" By this point, I could already feel the tears in my throat. It was getting hard to breathe. The stenographer had to ask me at least 3 times to answer questions audibly because I couldn't speak. What I said, barely audible, "No." What I should have said, "No, you asked how long the interaction lasted, not how many seconds I spent looking at his little purple penis." Just to watch the smile finally leave his ugly mug. Realistically, though, since everyone was stunned and scrambling, he was almost certainly at my window for at least a minute, but that's beside the point. He questioned the shirt collar, asked a few more questions, probably, and the judge dismissed me. Walking out of court was a blur, literally from the tears welling up and figuratively from a brewing panic attack. I think I was asked to take a seat in the back where my coworker sat with the manager from MD, but I flew out of the courtroom. I remember being disoriented and made a beeline for the main doors and had to cross in front of everyone. I saw my mom shoot up and follow behind me when she realized I wasn't coming to take a seat next to them. I was mortified and in full panic at this point. It's still extremely upsetting to think about, apparently. I've never been in a courtroom since. One of the police officers there caught me in the lobby on the way out and said, "Don't feel bad, he does it to me all the time." But that is like part of his job. Just like it was a lawyer's job to discredit me and be a dick, it was in fact not my job to serve naked people or be forced to sit across from them and testify. The creepy smile never left his face, even in court, and I also regret not pointing out that when asked about his facial expressions, I should have said, "No, I'm not an expert, but I know what a smile is," and he had the same one on that he's got right now. A couple of months after all that, I received another subpoena for a higher court. They were going to take it to state court or something, and I promised I wasn't going. I was convinced it would be easier to be the defendant, and if they wanted me in court again, it would be my own trial. Anyway, it turned out that he had previously murdered someone in a sandwich shop in Florida. I know, that escalated fast. They pled guilty, so I didn't have to go back. I don't know why it seemed like they didn't know this beforehand, because the second trial was only dropped after the news of his prior convictions spread. I also don't know how he was a free man on parole who was able to flash his junk to minors after murdering someone in Florida. The whole thing soured any positive view I may have had of lawyers or the court system. Hellfreezer's note. I served on a jury once, and I think the reason you didn't know about the previous convictions is because they're trying not to influence people's opinions. The one on trial for just that crime. The guy in the case that I was involved in had a slew of criminal convictions. I felt myself getting sleepy as they were reading out his previous list of convictions after he was found guilty of the crime he was on trial for at that particular time. So I think, I'm not a lawyer, not a judge. I think it's just so they don't taint your opinion. Because while I was fairly confident in how I rolled as a juror, and I think everyone else was too, if there was any doubt in my mind at that point, as soon as I heard that list of previous convictions, in fact, he was actually in jail serving for another crime at the time he was on trial for that. That erased any doubt I had. But that's my opinion, I don't know for sure. 5. 28-year-old man. To preface my situation, I truly did not expect to be in this position. My journey began with excitement and aspiration, but ultimately I've fallen short of my own expectations. I work for a relatively known shoe retail company that prides itself on being a people business. I had fallen in love with this company from the start as I believed in our core values, and I felt I was being brought up and invested in as a future pillar of the company. For my first year, I felt this was more than just a job while I was attending college, but a place I could grow and develop a career. I put myself on a track to work towards a corporate office role. Since then, I had connected with numerous coordinators and directors, many of which had verbally expressed interest in me and encouraged me to continue applying and interviewing for home office positions. This stopped after I interviewed for multiple applications for 3 different positions, a total of 11 different interviews, not including second round and final round interviews. Ultimately, the opportunities to corporate dwindled, and while I've prided myself on being able to turn rejection into a positive learning moment, I could only handle being told no so many times. I spent upwards of 7 years climbing and building my network inside and outside of the company. But about 4 years into my time, I noticed that while I was being relocated to fix multiple storefronts and develop each store's current or future store manager team, I was no longer climbing myself, and my career path began to stagnate. For the past 3 years, my annual pay has seen no improvement at all, and I received a promotion with no wage adjustment but more responsibility. I am still feeling my skills improving and appreciate that I have garnered a strong reputation within my company, as well as trust, but ultimately can't shake that the job is only continuing to require more from me with little to no adjustment for compensation or upward growth. Now, my solution ultimately is to walk away, but after almost a decade of developing my skills as a store manager, and ultimately district leadership, I feel that I've pigeonholed myself into being only built for other retail setting jobs. Advice from friends and family has been largely to find my way back into school and finally complete my bachelor's degree, Psych, which has been on ice for years, but in my current job, I have no way of setting that time up for myself, and I struggle with the idea of taking a pay cut with another company as I live alone, with my closest support being on the other side of the US. I was relocated to Chicago by my company. I have entered a few opportunities and applications, but still find my place of work hard to walk away from. Not because I still love this gig, but because of fear of the unknown. Without a blueprint, every risk seems riskier than the last. Is it confidence that I'm struggling with, or I'm afraid of rejection? I suppose I'm less worried about my feelings towards leaving and more so that I'm just struggling to decide on my next step forward. More than anything, I'm looking to vent and rant about how my situation is so unfair and ridiculous. But also, looking for any type of sign that points me in a direction to improve my current situation. Hellfreezer's notes. You've got a few different options here. You're not an old man, right? I'm in my 40s, and the fact of the matter is, the only job, other than the skills I've developed doing what I do now, is working in a shop serving people, is retail. And I don't want to do that. I would rather flay the skin from my body than do that. However, you're 28. You're a young man. Very definition of a young man. And if finishing your bachelor's degree is something you want to do, that is an option. You'll have to make peace with adjusting your circumstances, taking a pay cut, and dealing with the unfortunate situation perhaps of moving across country again. Or you can look towards retail. You have skills. You've developed many skills over the years that another store might find more useful. They might find it more beneficial to elevate you up the ladder a little bit quicker than you were hoping. Because it seems like your current place knows that you're very good at what you do, and they want to keep you there doing what you do, and that is often in a bad environment that isn't willing to take a chance on people. This situation. You become so good at your job, they realize they can't really replace you, or they would have a hard time doing so. Therefore, it doesn't behoove them, it doesn't benefit them to promote you. In perhaps a more positive place, they'd realize the potential you have, and if you're doing so well in that position, you'd do so much better in a higher position. But I feel, from what you've written, that retail is not your future. That's not really where your heart lies. You said you're afraid to walk away, and I get that. For me, leaving retail was, it was a moment of great courage. I had been planning to do my current job full-time if things improved a few months down the line anyway, but the moment just felt right. And it was a bad situation to be in anyway, so I took the chance, and I was very lucky that since 2016, for me, it worked out. And now you're in the situation where I feel that you need to take that leap of faith. Your old life isn't doing you any favors, you're just stuck there stagnating. Don't do that. Step forward. Embrace the future. And find the path you want to walk. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Adventures in Fast Food and Retail, episode 204, and thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please hit that like button, and share the video with friends and family. If you would like early access to these videos, and you can get that by supporting me on my Patreon page, which is linked in the description. You get all the videos on a Monday at once. All it'll cost you is as little as $1 or more if you like a month. You'll also find links in the description to the Hellfreezer Discord server if you'd like to join us over there, as well as the Hellfreezer Teespring store, where you can get your merchandise such as mugs, hoodies, and t-shirts, and so on. And the last way you can support the channel is if you really enjoyed today's video, why not leave a tip? Do that by clicking on the heart with a $sign underneath. Okay, that's all that out the way. Let's move on to the fun stuff. Hellfreezer's question of the day, and today's question is: how do you feel about the idea of a microcar? This was something I wasn't super familiar with until I stumbled across it recently on YouTube, and honestly I think I would definitely go for one. It's been on my mind more about finally getting my driving license. I took lessons years ago. Instructor turned out to be a massive pervert, not towards me, but just he later turned out to be a pervert, went to jail for it. And I just didn't go back for a long time. But I'm feeling the urge now. I've seen some nice cars out there. I like the idea of, honestly, electric cars are an idea that's really appealing to me. Just being able to charge your car at home. Yes, please. So I was watching these videos on microcars, and they're dinky little things, but honestly I'm looking at them thinking that 100% meets all my needs. 2 seats, a little bit of room in the back for groceries. Let me know what you think in a comment below. And before we go, let's have the answer of the day from a previous video. And I believe this was in relation to how do you know personally when it's summer, or when do you feel like the summer's starting to come in? And today's answer comes from Ink of Atlas. I can always tell when it's summer because of how long it takes to get dark. We go from sunset at 4 p.m. in the winter to sunset as late as 10 p.m. It's glorious, and the main reason summer is my favorite season. So much warmth and sun to soak up. Yeah, and I've gradually come around to appreciating that as I've gotten older. I used to always prefer when it got darker early, but I find myself just going out and buying groceries and things more, or getting out on my bike just for the exercise more. And I do generally prefer it if it's light, if you got a bit of sunlight especially, which I'm hoping we'll have today because I'm planning to go buy groceries later. But yeah, I agree. I've come to appreciate the sun. Thank you very much for your answer, Ink of Atlas. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. I've got one more video to record. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.